welcome to this documentary on impermanence for my Buddhist philosophy class. My name is Tyler Tribble, and we are going to do about 30 to 45 minute documentary in which we are going to talk about the concept of impermanence and that change is inherently a good thing and that we should not fight change, we should embrace it and the opportunities that it becomes. Um, I am joined here with my friend Matthew. Uh, we are in the game known as Red Dead Redemption. I thought this would be a good medium for us to discuss as we are not exactly in the same area. Matthew, why don't you say hi?
Hello.
We are going to be bouncing ideas back and forth across each other and just talking so that it's not only me talking about my ideas, so that we have another perspective, and he has some insightful stories to tell us as well. Um, I'll start this off by describing impermanence. Impermanence is known in Buddhist culture as anitta, and that is when that nothing is ever permanent, and that everything is subject to change. Karma, our bodies, our personality, our desire, time itself is constantly changing. Um, Even dharmas are said to change from time to time in this trapped cycle of rebirth. And this is significant because the dharmas are seen as the ultimate parts of the universe in Buddhist philosophy. They're what make us who we are, and they are technically our souls, even though in Buddhist culture you do not have a soul, you do not have a self. Um, and with this acceptance of everything changing, you can live a life of tranquility and peace. And many see change as something negative, or naturally, as humans, we tend to run away from change. And I hope to just enlighten people to embrace change in their life and see it as an opportunity to grow and to learn rather than something outright negative. Um, Ask yourself, how many times have you regretted not doing something simply because you were afraid of it being different or afraid of what it might cause or change? How many times have you gone through the motions of your expired routines and noticed that you were just unsatisfied? What friends or opportunities have you lost because you were afraid to change something about you? However, I cannot ignore the fact that not all change is good at a first glance. Um, it requires you to try and find a silver lining most of the time. Uh, I'll just start off with like basic example of say you buy a banana and you want to eat this banana later, but you forget about it, and so the banana becomes rotten, and you can no longer eat the banana. You could grumble and say this is awful, you lost your money, or you can see this decayed banana as an opportunity to plant it in your garden. And now you have a fertilized garden, and you can, depending on where you are, grow more bananas or grow different food. Um, the concept here is to always see that there is another side to change rather than just something negative. Um, I know Matthew here has had some change in his life recently, and why don't you tell us a little bit about what's happened with you recently and how change has affected your life?
Well, let me start by saying I love change and I embrace it wholeheartedly these days. Um, I was um, at home, very sick, feeling not myself, and I ended up on the floor in massive amounts of pain. The later diagnosis was um, chronic pancreatitis, and it prevents me from eating and um, drinking anything with sugar or fat or dairy, mainly anything. for the most part, starting December 30th all the way to the date today, which is what, the 9th, May 9th.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
it's the ninth today.
yeah, I mean, I love my food and I love an occasional beer or two, but after the diagnosis, I was put on a 100% water and chicken broth diet, and it was only supposed to last 5 to 7 days, and then I was supposed to heal. I usually walk around at 175, 185 pounds, and currently to this day, May, what, 9th, I weigh 125 pounds. I do not choose to lose this much weight. My body itself has basically given up on breaking down the food that I ingest, and I'm still searching for answers, but I've had to embrace a new a new lifestyle of not eating, for one, um, stints of 5 to 7 days of just water and chicken broth, just because it creates massive amounts of pain that's not worth the food I'm putting in my body, and it stops me from working. I can't go to work because I don't have the calories to, support my own weight under my body. And at the end of the day, I've had to embrace eating foods that I would have never put my hands on otherwise. I like my burgers, I like my chickens and my steaks and cereals and every mundane thing you could think of. Just a glass of milk is nice, and I can't have any of that. I get water and broth.
So
But
through
what?
this,
I'm sorry.
oh, you're fine. Sorry to cut you off.
No,
Through
it's fine.
this suffering, you now have like a more profound view on what can actually bring you pleasure. Now that you have
Yes,
more suffering, you can value what you took for granted.
absolutely. I really did take everything for granted. You know, like the only reason they could give me for having this illness is the alcohol that I've consumed in my life, which isn't at a great amount. It's just the only reason they could give me. And I, to this day, right now, honestly, wholeheartedly, I will never touch alcohol again in my life because I want my food back. And I see that I did take for granted that I could eat, and it just kind of went by as a day-to-day right of mine. I get to eat, and I saw that that wasn't a thing, and it's made me appreciate what I can do in a more clear-minded way, and it's made me respect my body in a way that I never have. I feel like it's actually a really great lesson for somebody who's acting so stupid in life, and I am absolutely 100% embracing the change, and I'm living a healthier lifestyle. I find myself waking up early and going for walks. I don't go down certain aisles in the grocery store because I know there's nothing down there that I want or need. And I plan on making this change a permanent change, a nice, healthy, permanent change the rest of my life. And it's because I didn't understand what I understand now, which is I was choosing short gratification, which is, give me my beer and my fried chicken now, rather than the long gratification of I'm still alive 10 years from now.
Of course, that that reminds me of some points by Van Hue. in a Louis Van Hue in this chapter 4 of his writing philosophy. He spoke about how it's about getting to the point, and the point is not that you're in the moment of suffering. The point is that you're still alive, and that
Yes,
it's about what you can do to make that life as best as possible. But in the end of the day, it's all about you just being alive. In my AP writing class I had for my senior year of high school, I had this teacher, Mr. Feeney, who he would talk all the time about a 2 by 4 sentence. And that is when you were to have a sentence right after a metaphor so as to demonstrate your point and get you right, like just get to the point, like hit someone over the head with a 2 by 4. And he has this on his page example of 57 when Van Hue um, he gives 7 examples for this as to not to write for the beginning of a thesis paper. In each example, they beat around the bush rather than getting straight to the point. This was the most important thing I have learned from his class is like don't worry about the stuff that isn't in your control. Don't worry about what doesn't matter because change is something that affects all of us and you certainly can't change the fact that you have this illness, so you are doing the best you can to make the best of it rather than going out and doing a crazy bucket list and skydiving and drinking more as most people probably would should they get this news. You've remained very mature about it and realized that this change can be something good and a way to turn around your life.
definitely.
Um,
I feel I feel like, without embracing the fact that I'm sick, I wouldn't be able to appreciate the fact that I'm sober and not drinking and taking care of myself.
exactly. Um, like, and you know that this suffering you might have is going to go away soon. You're like at some point you're going to be able to rest. And while some could say that the sour fact is, oh, you can rest when you're dead, that's still rest. um,
Definitely.
you can leave this world knowing that you did everything you could to live your best life. You didn't allow the illness to control you. You simply just changed what part of your life was wrong and for the better. And now you're, I'd say, like, you might actually be healthier than you were before this
I can
illness.
honestly say I probably am.
And
I'm just in pain.
that in itself is just something really, really rather strange is that you took this adversity and have grown from it. And that's what I'm trying to get at here with impermanence is that it's change is your opportunity to grow. Adversity is your opportunity to become a better person. Um, just as the whole point of Buddhist philosophy is to achieve enlightenment through bettering yourself, through finding your own path. Um, the idea of the noble truths that the truth is that you came from one calling, one cell, and then you're here today, and that the truth of suffering is that everything you go through in life, you will feature suffering, and you can't escape it, and that you must embrace it. Um, I'd like to pull up some sources I've discussed before. Um, in a book of Poetry of Impermanence by John Brehm, um, this book was a collection of different poetries, and so this one stuck out to me here. On page 14, the sonnet 73 by none other than William Shakespeare holds the power when discussing death and the change that even though a loved one may die, thou perceivest which makes thy love more strong. This in itself ties into the whole argument that change to be a good thing requires you to see a different perspective. Um, if, for example, like your condition were so bad that you were constantly in pain and no chance of getting better, like then that would push you to consider euthanasia. But I know as a person, for your perspective, you wouldn't want that. You would fight it and you would want to carry on. Um,
Yes.
in another poem, known as The Joke by Ron Paget, it tells of Jesus weeping out and asking, "Why hast thou forsaken me?" When he realized he was never entitled to life. No one is promised to be alive. Our state of life is constant change, and one day it could be guaranteed that we are to be alive, yet other days we could get hit by a bus. Nothing is truly within our control, and so we must take that control for ourselves when we get the opportunity to. In this article I read the other day about by Matthew McKeever, argues that the idea of impermanence on objects using metaphysics and the persistence and semantics of names, and that we are all just objects. Objects made of parts, and those parts make us into our wholes. And we are no different in the fact that we do not ultimately exist in the Buddhist concept of existence. We conventionally exist because it's easier for us to talk about it this way, but we do not inherently exist on our own as we are always changing. Um, this is like what we talked about in the class was with the elephant. When you see an elephant, your mind creates the image of an elephant, but that's only in your conventional reality that you are perceiving this elephant. Um, Objects themselves do not persist through time, they persist through our own realities. And I brought Matthew along today mostly because he has heard a little bit about this as we talk about it from time to time. And just Matthew, if you have any questions about this, feel free to probe me.
Um, well, you were saying about embracing change, um, to better your life, but sometimes, like I'm still stuck in this boat where I don't know if there is a getting better or not. So, is there ever a time when there is no lesson to be learned from your change? You just have to accept what's changing, no lesson to be learned.
Well, if there's a point where like you're, for example, like there is nothing you can do and you're just stuck, the lesson is that what is happening to you is out of your control. And the simple answer for Buddhist philosophy would be that you should not stress yourself with the suffering because you are not responsible for the suffering that has befall you. You must endure and survive and remain who you are. And if you can't use it to better yourself, then don't let it destroy you. If you are to
I
die,
like that.
die with who you are.
You know I will.
uh, on on page 477 of Matthew's article, however, uh, Melinda is talking to someone about a chariot, and this is like the talk of Nanking, I think it was the debate of Nanking, where he points to a chariot and he says, "What is this?" And the student says, "That's a chariot." He's like, "Why do you not call it by the wheels, or why do you not call it wood? Because those are the parts. Just as we give ourselves our names, those names are inherently empty. My name Tyler, your name Matthew. It is empty unless given the assignment of this whole that we are. And we are
I like it.
truly only responsible for what we do. We do not hold others responsible for what they might do or might cause. Instead, we simply continue on with our own path to enlightenment, our own journey to end suffering."
That boy's wicked smart.
When you said something about that reminded me of it was about like being stuck in that boat.
What boat?
Like you said, you were stuck in the boat of your suffering. You don't think there's an end in sight.
Oh yeah.
Um, that oh, here it is. Um, Basically, in today's day and age, everyone's concerned with the sufficiency mentality to make money, to go to college, possibly get a job, and spend money on things we don't need because that's what we desire and we think that will end our suffering. When really, in this search for the escape from suffering, we end up getting more suffering because as we have this job, we now have added on stress. We have added on all of this like time scheduling. I'm a
A place to
server.
be, someone to answer to.
Yep. I'm a server at a bar, for example. I have to deal with so many people who just don't care that I'm there to make money. They just want their food. And we see it all around us when people start to become more selfish and focused on them rather than others. And I myself I've always wanted to be someone who can invoke change, but I've never known how. And I see like change is something that's going to happen on its own. You can push for change, but change is its own animal. Um, just as you can't fight it, you can't start change. You can only pressure change. And I remembered what else I was gonna say. Um, the idea of your dharmas and your impermanence, that you're not always the same person, was compared to fire. So when fire burns, it takes fuel. And so if a fire were to start in just this one spot and it continued to burn for hours and hours, later on it would not be the same fire as when it started. You can trace it back to its origin. You can trace it back to what started the fire, what fueled the fire, but that fire is different from when it first sparked. But we still call it the same fire. That is basically what your soul is in Buddhist philosophy.
I like that.
And the idea behind it is that like, as the fire burns, it's different, it's constantly changing. Um, I know I've at a point in my life where a lot of my friends are moving away to different colleges or simply just getting out of the house. And we can see that it could be a negative thing, as, oh, I'm losing all of my friends. Or we could say as they are bettering themselves in the chance to get out there and actually explore the world. Um, I will wrap it up here with the idea that through acceptance of impermanence, one can simply just let go of all of this unneeded stress of having to control every single aspect of their life, because we really aren't in control of every aspect. We are only in control of a few things. Like with your health, you're in control of your diet. You can't control
Yes.
your pain. You can
No.
manage it, but you can't
Yes.
just get rid of it. You have to control what you can control. Um, so Matthew, is there any last words you would like to view? Oh, that sounded like you're dying. Is there any last words you would like to say to close out this podcast?
Um, yes. Control is an illusion. You can't control life. I didn't expect this. I expect to get better, but that's just me latching on to controlling how I feel. I feel like what you said was very intelligent, and most people your age wouldn't even think that way. And it wasn't until I got this sick that I started to, what do they call it? Uh,
Philosophize.
yeah, no, that's not a word. To be more philosophical.
Yeah, that works.
It didn't even occur to me really until I became this sick and started dwelling on mortality itself. So embrace change, love life, eat something good. Oh my God, I didn't. You know what? Change is good. Embrace
That's
change.
that's okay. Um, Sometimes you just fall off the cliff of life, and that's okay. Thank you for watching this podcast, Tyler
Thank you for
Tribble,
having me.
and thank you, Matthew, for being here.
For sure of it.
You will always remain in
I
our hearts.
appreciate you. And namaste.